Hi, everyone. My name is Carolyn Burns, and I'm here to welcome you and to lead us through a discussion about regeneration and rehabilitation in the mining sector. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and I'm joined today by two of my great colleagues, Olenka Forde, who's calling from British Columbia, and Sannoh, who's calling from Sierra Leone, or joining us from Sierra Leone. So I'm going to give a bit of a summary and a reminder of the objectives for today and what we're going to be talking about. And then I'm going to pass it off to my colleagues who are going to share some of the summaries of the projects they're working on. And then we're going to have a bit of a back and forth and a discussion about some of the things that we love about this work, some of the things that have led us here. And we'll also have some time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat or think about them and bring them up at the end. So as I said, my name is Carolyn Burns. I'm the Director of Sustainable Resources at Resolve. Resolve is an NGO that is based in Washington, DC, and we focus on multi-stakeholder problem solving and action. We do this in a number of different spaces. One is in biodiversity and conservation, the other is in health and community well-being, and then we work in the group that works on natural resources, sustainable resources. So one of the major issues that has been prevalent in the mining space for centuries is what happens after a mine is closed. We call this often closure. Sometimes this is mines are closed by big companies who then maintain and look after an asset. Other times mines are closed and then abandoned and they end up sitting there, and there are ongoing social and environmental impacts from mine closure. So this is something that has been really relevant and topical in the sector for a long time. And so at Resolve, it's a discussion that we've been looking at and trying to think about how to address. And so the two projects that we're going to be talking about today are two examples of how Resolve has tried to bring stakeholders together to address this issue around rehabilitation and restoration of mines. So like I said, Stephen is based in Sierra Leone, and his work focuses on artisanal mining in Sierra Leone. And I think he'll be giving you a bit of a taste for what artisanal mining looks like and some of the impacts of after mining has happened. So, Stephen, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for this opportunity to be a part of the panel. So, I am Stephen Sannoh. I am from Sierra Leone. And Sierra Leone is a small West Africa country. And mostly we are famous for diamonds, the blood diamond story, and those kind of things. But that was back in the days. So the nation is coming along strongly in a resilient way. So diamonds are a part of Sierra Leone history in a way. So in Sierra Leone, we have diamonds, we have gold, we have coltan, we have bauxite, rutile, and so many other minerals. And a kind of mining practice that is happening in Sierra Leone is what we call the artisanal mining. And artisanal mining generally is the act wherein people come together and look for minerals using very simple tools. Mostly they are called rudimentary tools. Or fondly, we laugh about them that they are back-breaking tools, because that is what really they do in essence. So most of the artisanal mining operations are done in a very sustainable way, unsustainable way. Allow me to share a couple of pictures so we can get the feel of what I'm talking about. Okay, oh, my screen, what's happening there? Oh, all right. So The picture you are seeing is a typical setting of artisanal diamond mining. So you see the workers are basically not protected. They are using basic tools and they are looking through the soil for diamonds. So generally, this is the way it is for diamond, this is the way it is for gold and coltan, as the case might be. And by estimate, we have figures that says that 15% of Sierra Leonean population are actually involved in artisanal diamond mining. And generally, diamond mining or mineral extraction generally contributes a lot of money to Sierra Leone. There are reports that says that in 2019, $400 million of export value from Sierra Leone was from the mineral sector. And of this $400 million, 16% of that money was actually as a result of artisanal diamond mining. So now you see the vital role this particular industry is playing as far as the economy of Sierra Leone is concerned. So like any other economic activity, mining, artisanal mining especially, has a lot of impact on the environment. As you see in the pictures, the earth is being removed, water is being pumped into places. So generally, there is an upset in the general ecology of the environment based on this kind of mining. So this kind of activities that is happening, again, as I said initially, the mining is a very unsustainable practice. So the miners don't know how to even take precautions to ensure that the environment is protected. So from that gap, we have the program that we are doing that is called the Peace Diamond Restoration Initiative. And the aim of this project generally is to see how we can provide support to the artisanal mining sector. So at the end of mining, we can be able to restore the impact that has been created. So we provide support to mining communities. And generally, this is the way it is. After mining, this is what you see. When you go to a typical mining community, you see ponds like this. So our project, the Peace Diamond Restoration Initiative, is focusing on this particular kind of things. So with this kind of arrangement, we engage government on one hand, we engage community leaders on the other hand, and provide support to the people for them to make this place useful again. Part of these processes we do generally is to provide training to the community youths so that they can have the exact skills that is required for them to work in a way that is productive when they are doing the restoration work. So we have a lot of community meetings, dialogue, a lot of dialogue with government officials. We are bringing a lot of other people, other players in government, like the Environment Protection Agency. They are coming to this program. The Ministry of Agriculture are also coming, and we have the Ministry of Mines that is also part of this project. So we all are in constant touch, negotiating and planning how to get project outcomes. So this is really a typical way of how we do. From the initial picture I shared onto the engagement with community leaders and to this picture, that is what we do. And you have a land that has been degraded by artisanal mining becoming productive again. So this also highlights the other aspect of the project that basically focuses on women empowerment. Because in Sierra Leone, agricultural activities is basically a way of women being part of economic production. So women are the leaders when it comes to vegetable gardening, rice farming, all that. So most of the land that are being restored, they are being used by women groups to do agriculture. So another key aspect of this project is that we have been able to form 20 youth women groups. They are mostly called farmer-based organizations. These are groups of women that comes together to do agriculture for a common purpose or common good. So we are also providing a lot of support for them in that kind of aspect. It's also important for me to note that since 2019, this project has been ongoing, and we have been able to reclaim 70 acres of land. And of that 70 acres of land, we have been able to reach 195 youths, 1,925 youths through our trainings. And we have also been able to reach 625 women who are currently using this restored land for sustainable agricultural production. So at the end of the project, this is really what it looks like. You have all the women coming in a group or in a community, they working together in a group, and they using this avenue to ensure that the land resources are taken care of. So just as a deep introductory, this is what we are doing in Sierra Leone, in Kono district to be specific, on the Peace Diamond Restoration Initiative project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That was such a good summary of the project, and I can't wait to ask you some more questions and learn more about how you got into this line of work. But before we do that, Olenka, we're going to turn to you. And I think one of the things that I find so fascinating about restoration and rehabilitation around closed mines is that it's happening all over the world. It's as relevant and important as in British Columbia and in Canada as it is in North America, as it is in Sierra Leone, and you could pick any country where this is a really important thing to do. So Olenka, yeah, take it away.
Thanks, Carolyn. That's a great segue to, I think, even what led to the launch of Regeneration. So I'll share my screen for a little overview about Regeneration. Yeah, so my name is Olenka Forde, and I'm with Regeneration, which was launched by Resolve, initiative created by Resolve. I think really stemming from exactly what you were saying, Carolyn, like a lot of the understanding that there is this large impact of mine sites globally, and there's a need to restore that. But the second part of that is that there's also an opportunity to remine some of the waste at these sites. So that's what Regeneration is really looking to do. It's a restoration and a remining enterprise. So there are two concepts to really consider here. And one is that as we move into energy transition, wanting more responsible and green minerals and metals to support the energy transition, we need to find critical minerals. And there's a lot of government initiatives and mining initiatives around that, but we want to do that also responsibly. And we also need to have a lot of restoration efforts to support communities and address the impacts that have been caused by historical mining. So there are two concepts here that we can take, and if we think about it differently, we can see these historical mine sites, these legacy mine sites, really as an opportunity. And that's where Regeneration has come in and taken a different perspective. So I think if you think about a legacy mine site, there might be an approach where you just remine the waste and you walk away, or you might just restore it. But if you combine these together, then you can really have the site become both an environmental and a community asset by restoring that landscape. But you can also consider the waste as a resource. And so many of the mine sites that were mined in the 50s or the 80s didn't have the interest or the technology to extract minerals and metals that are really important today to support that green energy transition. And so part of that is harnessing different technologies and the advancement we have there. And the way that Regeneration is structured and the way that we're trying to approach these sites is almost using them as a laboratory for technology innovation, where we can look at different startup companies, different technologies to trial and say what allows us to access these minerals and metals that we weren't able to before, and that can support the need for those critical minerals and metals across different sites. And doing this has the added benefit of removing all the waste that's been left on a site. In some cases, that allows you to repurpose the waste. You might have to, still restore some of the waste in different ways on the site, but ultimately you're given a chance to repurpose that landscape and engage with communities to retell the story. And we like to say it's a chance to begin again for both communities, the environment, and for mining. So that's our approach that we're taking for looking at legacy mine sites as an opportunity to begin again. And because Regeneration was launched by Resolve, we had a chance to do a proof of concept back in 2019 before launching Regeneration. And this is Salmon Gold, which is now part of Regeneration as an initiative. So the idea with Salmon Gold is to restore old placer gold mining sites where the tailings from that processing to extract gold have blocked stream pathways and disrupted habitat for salmon and other salmon and other fish species that can't migrate in those streams that have been blocked. So by working in these areas and partnering with different placer miners and government, we're able to restore streams and habitats and wetlands, which we've done in Alaska, the Yukon, and BC. And what we observed in these areas is that it starts to tell a positive story for natural resource development in these regions. And it brings together people that you wouldn't think would usually collaborate in the mining space, both upstream and downstream. So working with communities and First Nations, a lot of Native corporations have been involved in these projects. And then we're able to produce gold that is now in the products of Apple, Tiffany, and they will be with our new partner, Majuri, as well. So this proof of concept is continuing. Like there's many projects ongoing for Salmon Gold now as part of Regeneration, and we're taking this concept to a larger scale where we do the remining and restoration on other sites in North America and Australia. So that's where we're at with Regeneration. We're 2 years old and really excited to transform the space with legacy mines and restoration.
Thanks so much, Olenka. It's such fascinating work. And yeah, I hope everyone can start to see some of the threads that are consistent amongst all of these projects are the innovation and the creativity that it requires to look at something that is an ongoing, consistent practice and think about it a bit differently, and also just to see opportunity in what might appear to be a big problem, but could actually really unlock a lot of social, economic, and environmental benefit. So thank you so much, Stephen and Olenka, for that summary. I'm really keen to turn to you guys and to hear more about your background and how you got into this space. I know when I graduated from my undergrad, if you had told me I would be working in the mining sector in 20 years, I would say you're totally wrong. There's no way I would ever work in the mining sector. And let alone to be working in the restoration and rehabilitation of the sector. So Stephen, can you tell me a bit more, or tell us, sorry, a bit more about your background? Like, how did you get here? What was your path?
Thank you. It's a pretty interesting question because it actually provides me an opportunity to reminiscence and go back on things. So generally at the moment, I have a degree in environmental sciences, with a honors in environmental chemistry. So before I went to school, before I went to university, I was this kind of shy person. I was a bit shy. So mostly I was not interacting at all. But it was also during the days when we have a war in Sierra Leone, the periods of the war, so there was a lot of instances of youths underdevelopment. You have the issues of child soldiers, child rebels, and all those kind of things happening to young people. So from that instance, it was clear that we, the youth of Sierra Leone, are at risk. So I clearly had that vision. So I started doing a lot of youth activism, talking to young people and the impact of war and the issues of good governance. and sustainable resource management. Again, where I am from, Sierra Leone, in the eastern part of Sierra Leone, Kenema, we have a forest cover. It is part of the Guinea forest. So we have that belt. So as the war was raging, you have companies coming to extract timber, the war, expansion of settlement. So the forest cover was actually disappearing at very alarming rate. So all these things was also being flagged personally that, well, we can't continue like this because the forest was green and it was lush and everything. Now you hardly see a lush cover. So what happens down the line? So again, it was a matter of raising awareness and engaging people on the need for sustainable resources. So fortunately, fresh from university in 2012, I was hired to come to manage the Mendeleev Diamond Standards at that time. It was called the Mendeleev Diamond Standards. And the whole idea of that project was to see how we can experiment with artisanal diamond miners if they can be able to realign their operations in ways that are ethical. Ethical in the sense, if they can observe environmental management principles, if they can observe health and safety principles in their mining, because that is not a commonplace. In a typical artisanal mine, you don't have health and safety consideration, the consideration of the environment, the water system, the ecology, biodiversity. There is no consideration to that. So I was pretty much excited saying that, okay, this is what I want to do. This is it. This is for me. So since 2012, we came and the project was largely successful because I think it was the first project that was focusing on formalizing the artisanal diamond mining sector. And from that intervention, we are able to learn a lot. And we also have interesting programs now that are also based on those concepts of ethical production, care for the environment, care for community, and care for workers' rights, and all those kind of things. So from that intervention, we have the Geoscientist program now, which is actually a one-stop solution for artisanal mining formalization. So you have a system wherein you can trace your production from mine sites onto markets using a blockchain system. So that is where we actually came into this whole sector of resource governance. So as we are doing the formalization for artisanal mining sector, there was also this issue of land degradation because of artisanal mining. Again, I keep saying, because they are informal, their practices are sustainable. There is no regard for environmental practices or environmental resources. So some conservative estimates in some literature are saying that in Sierra Leone, we have up to 35,000 hectares of land that has been degraded by artisanal mining. So based on those kind of things, we also branch out into seeing how we can work with community leaders and government structures to see how we can mitigate the large land degradation that has been occasioned by artisanal mining. So that was how we actually came into this whole thing. I came in from those days of wartime to the desire to manage resources and the issues of diamonds and curbing conflict diamonds, and now into the issues of land restoration and providing communities valuable land resources that they can use for other economic activities. Thank you.
Stephen, that's such an amazing arc to think about, from sort of social activism and how those things can be so important and useful throughout your career, and really, create a good foundation. So thank you. Olenka, same question to you. What is your background? Did you, have you always wanted to be in this sector? Was it a bit of a surprise to you, or how did you get here?
I think it was a bit of a surprise, but also wasn't. I always laugh because I have this really great picture from kindergarten when everyone dresses up for career day, and friends were teachers, firefighters, vets, and for some reason I showed up as a geologist. I think very much inspired by my grandmother. So I've been exposed to the industry for a long time, but always I think had a key eye on the environmental issues that we were facing. I completed a liberal arts and science undergraduate degree, so it was very much about interdisciplinary integrative thinking, and a lot of it brought up global issues that we're facing, which I think had me thinking a lot about how do we address these problems and how do we start tackling them. I did a lot of different summer work jobs and internships in different sectors and became drawn to issues related to water quality and sustainability and the natural resource sector. And I started a master's degree at UBC, which turned into a PhD because I was just having so much fun exploring topics there that I was doing my research on. And I think that it was an interesting balance that I really value now, having both the technical background to think critically about projects in the natural resource space, but also really being driven by a passion to be interdisciplinary and integrative to address a lot of the problems that we're facing with environmental issues in the natural resource sector. I think that the job that I'm in now, I absolutely love, and it's very different. Before Regeneration, I was working in more of a conventional space, and it was a lot harder for me to feel that it aligned with my way of thinking. I think when you have to be in a structured group and you can't be very creative and innovative, for me that didn't work well, and I knew there was a different approach, which is what led me to Regeneration, because I reached out to Steve about Resolve, and he said, well, we're launching Regeneration right now. So it was meant to be, and the timing worked out. So I think that things aren't always, as you were saying yourself, Carolyn, like straightforward. There's not always a path there, but if you are checking in with yourself and listening and start aligning with what you value and where you want to be, opportunities will present themselves if you keep open.
That's such good insight, Olenka. And I also have my undergrad was in an arts degree, and there were many times where I thought, why, what is the clear usefulness of this degree? But I'm reminded all the time of just that, as you said, like integrative thinking, how there's opportunities for it in every industry, but especially this one. And definitely the importance of finding places where you can be creative, if that's important to you. And I mean, that's a good plug for Resolve and Regeneration. Just it's like, that's what I think makes us, it's why people want to partner with Resolve, and it's why people like to work at Resolve, is because there is lots of room to explore ideas and test things out. So on that, Stephen, and I'm curious to know, what is it like to work at an NGO in the mining space? I think most people, when they think about opportunities, career opportunities in this sector, they think about being a geologist or working for a company or working for a regulator. Or maybe for an advocacy NGO, but what's it like to work for a development NGO in this space?
Yeah, so Caroline, as you clearly alluded, it is not a commonplace to have a development NGO in the mining sector. I think in Sierra Leone, as I was saying, a real concrete example of an NGO in mining sector was the program we did in 2012. That was really a rare one, clearly focused. So initially it was say, oh, you are the mining NGO. So yeah, even in cases when people want to address you, they will describe you fully. Oh, you are the mining NGO, because it was really not a common place. All what we are very much familiar was the relief systems, the food aid, the educational aid. So the whole idea was NGOs were really just in relief and humanitarian thing, and not in resource governance, because again, it was resource governance. Basically, mining is about money, it's about profits, it's about enterprise. So coming with a non-enterprise approach into this sector, it was strange. But again, that whole concept was also negated because of we realized the role resources, generally diamonds, in the case of Sierra Leone, played in making things uncomfortable. So the whole idea of, okay, you cannot do this, you cannot, but again, we said, no, listen, look, you have the story of blood diamond. So about blood diamond, we should have a system of managing these resources. So everybody, communities at rest, government has its role, civil society has its role. So it was a kind of that way, so now you really have a lot of other people now in the resource governance space for sustainable resources. You have pure advocacy, development efforts like what we are doing here, and the government is much more open, because again, whatever development programs we do in resource governance, we are exactly complementing the efforts of government, But one thing that is pretty much really interesting when you are an NGO in the resource governance sector, most of the times they see you as this person that has all the solutions. You have all the answers you have, and which is basically not the case, because most of the times we go in these programs, we don't have a lot of clue. It's going to be a learning process and all that on one hand. On the other hand, there are issues of resource constraints, because you can only do all what you can do with what you have, So with this opinion, oh, they are the NGO, they have to ensure that everything's working clean and everything's fine. We are constrained. So you also have to have the heart of walking that tightrope to see that you have the balance, But interestingly, it is so important to realize that because of an NGO, things are changing in the resource sector. For example, the stories of diamond is actually changing a lot because of an effort of an NGO, and now we are having a lot of friction or momentum around the issue of restoration. The government is really putting it on a map now. Other players are putting it on a map. That's just because of an NGO started the whole idea. So NGOs and resource governance in the sustainable space is a key thing, and it is being, for me, I mostly say, well, we are the silver bullets. When we appear, a lot of people fall in and things align, and we have impact and we have results. So that has been the way it is for me, being an NGO in the natural resource management sector.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks. And Olenka, I'm curious, I'm going to ask you the same question in a second about what it's like to work for a social enterprise, which, is a lot different than working for a for-profit organization or even for an NGO. But we have a question in the chat and I want to make sure it's sort of good timing. The question is, does Resolve and Regeneration get inquiries from young people about ideas and new projects? Are we seeking more projects? And if someone wanted to bring a project to you, how should they proceed? It's a really good question. We don't currently have like a formal channel for people to pitch things, but maybe that's a really good idea. Maybe we should have an annual pitch competition. But what I would encourage you to send us an email. We are pretty on top of our info@Resolve and Regeneration email addresses. Or you can, if our contact details are available, you should contact us directly. But I will also say that I think one of the things that makes Resolve and Regeneration so much fun is just this interest and openness to ideas. We often have interns, summer placements, or work placements with most often graduate students. And they are always bringing great ideas to us. And we, if when it's a good fit, we let them run with lots of ideas and they're able to sort of test and execute some things. So the quick answer is we don't have a formal channel, but please do get in touch, and maybe that's a good idea. We should have a formal channel for pitches. Okay, Olenka, tell us, what's it like working for what is a social enterprise? Maybe you can
Sure.
explain, and then why is it unique? Why is it cool? Maybe what are some of the challenges?
Thanks, Carolyn. Yeah. So Regeneration is a public benefit corporation, and so as a social enterprise, our work is ultimately at the end for public good. And there's a lot of benefits for this in the way that we're structured, especially with our goal of looking at legacy mine sites differently and doing the remining. And one of those benefits is that we don't need to have a conventional sort of profit structure and sort of revenue stream that a lot of conventional mining companies do. Instead, what our goal is to do, and what we are allowed to do under the structure, is for the public benefit, take revenue that we might have from remining and purpose that towards restoration and community visions for transforming those legacy mine sites. And it also means that, you know, when we approach a site, we're viewing it very differently, and we're not just saying this is a great, you know, cash bonus site. We're actually saying, how can this whole landscape look different? How can we start to engage and bring in all these different parties to the table that aren't used to sitting together and saying, you know, what do communities want? What do we need to do from the technology perspective, and what do we need to do from the remining perspective and the restoration? So there's lots of different considerations that come in, but our ultimate end goal is for public benefit. So that's that perspective. But I really liked what Stephen was saying about, you know, NGOs highlighting that the natural resource sector is changing. And I think it's the same thing here, that there's not only a need for it, but it's if not the only way, one of the best ways forward for addressing a lot of these problems. And equally the question from, you know, bringing in ideas, I was, you know, writing down sort of like the first thing that came to my mind about this question was like all these buzzwords, and one of them was dream big is how I feel being a part of a social enterprise, because there is a lot of need for creativity and innovation and just thinking differently about the problems that we're facing. And I think now more than ever, with a lot of the problems that the world is facing, that's exactly what we need, is to dream big and come up with lots of innovative solutions. So it's a lot of fun at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thanks, Olenka. I think that I'm pretty firm in my belief that there's no way that one sector or one organization can make sure that we have responsible, sustainable natural resource development. And it really is a place where we need government action, we need companies to be involved, we need civil society to be involved, and we need all of the sort of other sectors that come along with that. So no, it is. It's an exciting place to be. So I like that. The dream big. It's not a buzzword. It's real. All right. Well, we're sort of nearing-ish the end of our time, so I'm going to encourage anybody, if they have questions, to put them into the chat. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask Stephen and Olenka, what are you guys most excited about for the future? What when you think about, if you were to come back to LIAMforum in 5 years, what would you be most excited to be talking about? Stephen, you go first.
Yeah, so my fundamental excitement is the ability for all of us in the forum here to continue talking about the steps and processes and approaches that will ensure that resources are managed sustainably. You know, because at some point in my mind, I will be sitting, probably we're going to lose everything. In some years to come, there will be no more diamonds, no more clean water, no more forest cover, no more biodiversity. At some point, I will start thinking like that. But I am certain that with this kind of engagement, especially with the young people who are striving to loop in to this kind of efforts, I think it will be a way that we are building a critical mass around the issues of resource governance. And as long as we are building those mass, those understanding, and we are also like trying to ignite the desire of young people to be a part of this whole crusade of ensuring that we have resources, and these resources are serving us today, and they will serve the generation yet unborn. I think I am pretty much excited about. So down the line, 5 years from now in this same forum, I'll be very proud to say, well, because of these things we are saying, we now have massive uptake of restoration, or probably all degraded land in Sierra Leone are actually now restored, and they are being used for sustainable purposes. You know, so that is what I'm pretty much excited over. You know, because it provides an insurance of the existence of the human race and resources by extension.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Olenka, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I have to agree with Stephen. I think that's what I was thinking also, that we are in a, an era of change where not only do communities have a lot more power and say, but the environment does too. And there's a lot of push to view things differently and how we're approaching things. And I think it's a chance to harness that and really take action. And I'm really excited to see where that leads, whether it's things like regeneration popping up, or whether there's a new, a lot of the younger community coming in and would love to have innovative ideas and ways to address a lot of the problems we have. I think it can be overwhelming and daunting, but I think if we also are innovative and creative and we harness that opportunity and that call to take action, then we can have a lot of change. And I'm excited to see where that will go. And I think there's space and a need for it. So I think that'll be really great.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, when I think about the future, either 5 to 10 years from now, what gets me excited, and I guess maybe it's when you think sort of 5 to 10 years before historically, is just where we're headed and people's interest and capacity to engage across sectors to address some of these issues. That, I mean, there's still so many challenges for people to do so. Some of them that we see in our work is that people don't have the language to actually talk to people in a different sector. So if you're working in a company environment, for example, or for-profit environment, you don't know how to talk to government, you don't know how to talk to civil society, or upstream, downstream, because you don't have the language. So that's one of the things that we see is really changing. We also see that people often aren't incentivized to do so, that they're, the way we've built a lot of our decision-making systems is it encourages people to just sort of like focus on their task and move it forward. And we see that really shifting a lot, both in terms of just soft social expectation, but also in terms of regulation and regulatory requirements for people to work together more. And then another good reason why people don't currently work together, and one that we see is changing, is people don't have access to each other. So they either don't, the power dynamics are such that there's not, an opportunity for someone to approach another, or one organization to approach another, or they literally just don't know who the individual is to pick up the phone and call somebody. And we see that shifting as well, that there are more and more opportunities for people to have the space to actually collaborate across sectors. And I think the last thing that really keeps me in this line of work is just at the center of multi-stakeholder action is relationships. It's people, it's knowing individuals, trusting them, finding ways to talk to each other, even when you don't agree, especially when you don't agree. And so I think that at the core of it is about relationship building. And if we can do more of that, then we can work together and we can solve some of these problems, especially in the natural resources sector. So those are some of the things that I'm excited about. We do have one question in the chat. It is, applying your know-how and perspective at the feasibility study level is likely to deliver massive economic benefits by reducing not just negative environmental impacts, but also closure and remediation costs. I love this question. I wish I knew who was asking this question. For people who don't know, a feasibility study is something that happens earlier on in a mine life. So before you even dug a hole or built a mine, you do a feasibility study. And it usually actually comes a number of years after people have started to look at an area and think decide if there was a mine that could be developed. But it's really the first time that people are making a plan and designing what the future could look like. And historically, this is done by some technical people, and then there's a permitting office or a regulator who says, okay, great, you've met those requirements, and then a mine gets built. And that's sort of a very light way of saying what happens, but that's sort of generally what has historically happened. And what we're seeing more and more is not just that industry is making sure that at this stage they're thinking more collaboratively about what what a mine could look like, what the impacts of that mine could be, but more importantly, that communities and governments and civil society are thinking longer term, and they're in a position to say at this time, this is what this mine should look like from our perspective. These are the regions that are really important to us that we don't want mining activity in. These are other regions where we could have mining activity, but these are the conditions under which it needs to happen. And so there's a lot more opportunity at that stage to bring people together to agree on those things and sort of set a better foundation for what mining could look like. Another thing that I'll say, and this is something that we're sort of talking about and hearing a lot about in our work, is the concept of cumulative impacts. We have historically, as an industry, when we talk about an impact from a mine site, we're looking at one mine site and the specific impacts that one site has, as opposed to looking cumulatively across a landscape and looking at not just all the impacts of all the mining activity, but all the industrial activity, all the social activity, and really taking a big picture approach to understand how we balance out how things are shifting and changing. And that's something that we're seeing a lot more, is that at this feasibility stage of looking not just at one specific mine site, but trying to look across an area to understand the cumulative impacts and make decisions based on those. So yeah, thanks for that question. And I think it's an area where I'm seeing a lot of movement, and I hope in 10 years it's considered totally commonplace to be at the feasibility stage, having more multi-stakeholder decision-making and planning that's, community-led for sure. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we don't have any more questions in the chat. I don't know, Stephen or Olenka, if you wanted to offer any closing thoughts or reflect on the feasibility study question.
Yeah, so yes, it's a great question. And as you rightly said, it is not a commonplace, because like for the artisanal mining sector, as informal as it is, there are still regulations that government has to say, before you begin to do your mining, you have to have a plan for closure, you have to have a plan for rehabilitation and so. But that is just like that. It is just in writing, in policies and that. A, the miners don't have the capacity to undertake those kind of studies. B, the technical capacity, the finance to undertake those kind of things, the miners don't have. So those kind of things give increased credence for the presence of NGOs in the resource governance space, because these are the kind of gaps we see in management, and we come resources and technicalities and resources or whatever for us to help overcome. So it is key that government, private sector, and civil society NGOs really rally around these whole issues of sustainability in the mining sector. That is the way to go, and that is the only way we have. Thank you so very much.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Olenka, do you have any closing thoughts or and notes on the feasibility question?
No, I think you guys covered that topic really well, and I think it applies to what you're saying about, where are we going in the future, and how the landscape and working in the space is changing, and it's driven a lot by society and the need to protect environment. But I think it also speaks to, speaking with the LIAMforum, the need to have younger generations come in and work in this space, and how exciting it is. And there's a lot of opportunities, and all of us would be happy to speak to anyone that's interested in working in these areas. And yeah, mostly just be excited about all the chances there are out there, and there's a lot of diversity and excitement.
Great. Thank you, Olenka, and thank you, Stephen, and thanks to Raziel and Stephanie and to everyone at the LIAMforum. It's really fun to get to talk about our work, and even more fun to talk about what we like about it and what we're excited about for the future. So we're going to end it there. And please do reach out over LinkedIn or on our website, and we'll try to get back to you. Thank you.